After our family dinner, I checked my account and it was empty. My $50,000 had completely disappeared. The phone screen showed a balance that chilled me to the bone. 0 cents. 40 years of work, sacrifice, and saving, every penny vanished in a single night. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of from. I want to know how far it's traveled, because this story is going to leave you speechless. My son, Daniel Carter, laughed from my own sofa. A laugh I had never heard before, cruel and ruthless. "We needed this more than you, Mom," he said with a smile I didn't recognize. "Old folks like you don't need that much money anyway." His wife, Vanessa Cross, nodded from beside him with that calculating expression that had always made me uneasy. It's better off in the hands of people who are actually going to use it. I took a deep breath, feeling a tremor take over my hands. I picked up my purse and looked at them with a calm that surprised even myself. "Then you won't care about what comes next," I murmured. They kept laughing as if my words were a joke, but at that precise moment, a thunderous crash shook the entire beach house. The front door of the beach house burst open. To understand how I got to this moment, I need to go back a few hours. It all started that morning when Daniel called me after 3 months of complete silence. His voice sounded different, softer, almost regretful. "Mom, Vanessa, and I want to invite you to dinner tonight at your place. We'll cook. You just relax. It's time to fix things between us." After months of fighting over his father's inheritance, after his shouts demanding my money because he deserved it, those words sounded like heavenly music to me. My mother's heart filled with hope. Perhaps my son had finally reflected on all the pain he had caused. I spent the entire afternoon getting ready something I hadn't done since my husband's funeral. I put on the olive green dress that Daniel loved so much when he was a child. The one he always said made me look like a princess. I searched my jewelry box for the pearl necklace my late husband gave me for our 20th anniversary. Each pearl represented a year of happy marriage, of building together the future that Daniel now seemed to want to destroy. As I brushed my hair in front of the mirror, I remembered the words my mother told me before she died. "Evelyn, children sometimes get lost along the way, but true love always brings them back home." Those words gave me strength during the 3 darkest months of my life when my own son threatened to cut off contact with my grandchildren if I didn't hand over my money. They arrived promptly at 6:00 p.m. Daniel carried flowers, white lees, my favorites. Vanessa carried a bag full of ingredients for my favorite dish curry chicken with jasmine rice. Everything seemed perfect, just like the old days when Daniel visited me every Sunday with his family. During dinner, Daniel told me about his new business project, about how he wanted to expand his small construction company. His eyes shone with the passion I remembered from when he was young and dreamed of being an architect. Vanessa, for the first time in months, asked about my health, about my friends from the knitting club. She even complimented my new hair color. "Mom," Daniel said to me as I served dessert, "I'm so sorry for everything that happened these past few months. I know I was very hard on you. It's just that business is bad. We have so many debts, and when Dad died, I thought you could help us more." His eyes filled with tears that seemed so real, my heart completely melted. "My son," I said, taking his hand, "your father and I saved that money for our golden years. But if you really need it, we can talk about a loan in a fair way for everyone." The smile he gave me confirmed that I had made the right decision. My family was healing. It was after dessert that everything changed. Daniel and Vanessa exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret at the time, but which I now understand perfectly. It was the look of 2 predators about to attack their prey. Daniel cleared his throat and pulled his phone from his pocket. "Mom, before we talk about the loan, there's something you need to do for us," he said with a voice that no longer sounded pleading, but demanding. "I need you to transfer the money tonight. Everything is urgent." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The sweetness of a few minutes ago had evaporated like smoke. "Daniel, son, I don't understand the rush. We can go to the bank tomorrow, talk to the manager, do things properly." "No, Mom." Vanessa interrupted with a smile that no longer reached her eyes. It has to be now. Tonight we have an investment opportunity that can't wait another day. She stood up from the table and approached me with her phone in her hand. You have the bank app on your phone, right? It's very easy. Just a few clicks and done. My maternal instinct began to fight against my intuition. Something wasn't right. But Daniel was my son. For 40 years, he had been my pride, my joy. The child who ran to hug me when I got home from work. The young man who promised to take care of me when his father was gone. How could I distrust him now? It's just that $50,000 is a lot of money, Daniel, I said with a trembling voice. Your father and I took decades to save that amount. I worked double shifts at the laundry-cleaned offices on weekends. I sold my engagement ring when you had that medical emergency as a child. That money represents a lifetime of sacrifices. Daniel sighed impatiently and sat next to me on the sofa. He took my hands, but his touch no longer comforted me as before. Mom, don't you trust me? I'm your son. I would never hurt you. Besides his after dinner, I opened my banking app expecting to see the familiar safety of my savings. Instead, the screen cut through me like a blade. Balance 0.0. 40 years of double shifts, weekend cleaning jobs, and skipped vacations gone. Vanished in one night. My hands trembled so hard I nearly dropped the phone. From the sofa across the room, my son, Daniel Carter, laughed. Not the warm laugh I had known when he was a boy, chasing waves on the beach. This sound was jagged, cruel, a stranger's laugh. We needed it more than you, Mom, he said, his lips curling into a smile that no longer belonged to the son I raised. Old folks like you don't need that much money anyway. Beside him, his wife, Vanessa Cross, nodded approvingly, her expression sharp and calculating. It's better off in the hands of people who can actually use it, she said, as if my lifetime of sacrifice had been nothing more than loose change for their pockets. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The son I once held on my lap, the boy who promised to take care of me when his father died, was now the man stealing every last piece of security I had. It felt like watching an angel step down from the altar, only to smash the altar into dust. I was falling from that same altar where I had placed my trust, my love, my life's work. I steadied myself, clutching my purse with trembling hands. Then you won't care what happens next, I whispered, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. They kept laughing as though my words were a joke. And then, like thunder breaking through a storm, the beach house shook. The front door burst open, slamming against the wall with a crash that made us all jump. The irony is that the night had started with hope. That very morning, Daniel had called me after 3 long months of silence. His voice sounded softer, almost repentant. Mom, Vanessa, and we'd like to come over for dinner. We'll cook. It's time to fix things between us. Those words pierced through my loneliness like a sunrise after weeks of rain. After months of shouting about his father's inheritance, months of threats that I'd never see my grandchildren again, I wanted to believe my boy was finally coming home, not just to the beach house, but back into my life. So I prepared as if it were Easter Sunday. I wore the olive green dress Daniel had loved when he was little, the one he used to say made me look like a princess. I even clasped the pearl necklace my late husband gave me for our 20th anniversary. Each pearl was a year of laughter, partnership, and dreams we built together. Dreams I thought I was passing down to Daniel. They arrived right at 6. Daniel held lilies, my favorite. Vanessa carried groceries for curry chicken with jasmine rice. For the first time in months, my kitchen filled with the smells and sounds of family. For a moment, I believed. During dinner, Daniel's eyes lit up as he spoke of expanding his construction business. Vanessa asked about my health and even complimented my hair. And then, just as dessert was served, Daniel took my hand, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I know I've been hard on you. But business is bad. We're drowning in debt. I thought you could help us more when Dad died. Tears shone in his eyes. My mother's heart melted. Perhaps this was the prodigal son coming home. I told him we could talk about a loan fairly for everyone. For a fleeting moment, I thought our family was healing, but then came the look the one Daniel and Vanessa exchanged across the table. Predators about to pounce. Mom Daniel said, voice now flat and demanding, "I need you to transfer the money tonight. All of it." I froze. "Daniel, we can go to the bank tomorrow, do things properly." "No," Mom Vanessa cut in, eyes sharp as glass. "It has to be tonight. There's an investment opportunity. You have the app on your phone, right? Just a few clicks and it's done." Every fiber of my body screamed that something was wrong. But this was my son. How could I refuse him? How could I imagine that the boy I once rocked to sleep was now holding a knife to my future? I told him $50,000 was a lifetime of sacrifice shifts at the laundry weekends, scrubbing offices, the engagement ring I sold when he had that childhood medical emergency. Daniel sighed impatiently, sitting closer, his grip on my hands, no longer comforting but cold. "Mom, don't you trust me? I'm your son. I'd never hurt you." His eyes hardened. "Besides, part of that money should be mine anyway. Dad would have wanted it that way." And then his mask dropped. Gone was the apologetic son. In his place stood a man consumed by desperation. Just as I struggled to find my voice, the old grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime loud, solemn, echoing through the beach house. It was the clock my husband had restored with Daniel when he was only 12, sanding the wood together, fitting the brass pendulum. For years, its chime had meant Sunday dinners, family prayers, and Christmas mornings. Now the chime struck like a warning bell, a reminder that time itself was slipping away. Daniel's face twitched at the sound, as though the memory it carried was too much to bear. He turned away, gripping his phone tighter. And in that instant, I realized the truth. The clock marked more than the hour. It marked the collapse of everything sacred between us. By the time I picked up my purse, pretending to prepare for the transfer, the illusion of family had shattered. Daniel stood over me, no longer the boy I raised, but a stranger. Vanessa's eyes glinted with triumph, and when the beach house door exploded open with that thunderous crash, it felt as though the very altar of my life had crumbled beneath me. My son, the child once lifted high, was now the hammer poised to destroy me. Shock like falling from an altar. Evelyn's world crashes as Daniel reveals himself as an intruder in his own mother's home, tearing down both her safety and her sacred memories. And I want to ask you, friends, if it were you, would you give in to your child's demands out of love, or would you stand firm to protect what you've built? Press 0 for give in. Press 1 for stand firm. The thunderous crash of the beach house door still rang in my ears. Part 1 ended with my altar collapsing, and now the pieces of that altar cut into me with every second. My son Daniel stormed back inside his eyes, wild, his breath ragged. Behind him, Vanessa's voice carried through the night air like the hiss of a predator. "We know you lied, Evelyn. The money never transferred. Don't make us do this the hard way." The home my late husband had built with such care was no longer a sanctuary. It was a hunting ground. And I was the prey. Daniel slammed his fist against the wall, the old photos rattling in their frames. Our family portrait, a younger Daniel with his arm around me at his high school graduation, shook loose and crashed to the floor. Glass shattered across the hardwood just as my illusions had shattered. I bolted to the bedroom, locking the door behind me, then to the small bathroom off to the side. It was ridiculous to think a thin bolt in a hollow core door could keep out the rage of my own child. Yet in that moment, the bathroom felt like the last corner of my life. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. Still, I managed to dial 911. My whisper cracked in the darkness. "Please, my son. He's trying to break in. He wants my money. He's not himself. Please hurry." The operator's voice was calm, professional, but I could barely hear her over the pounding of my own heartbeat. "Stay on the line. Officers are on the way. Can you stay safe? The word mocked me. Daniel's footsteps pounded closer. He kicked my bedroom door, wood splintering under the force. Vanessa urged him on. harder. Don't let her get away with this. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, but my other hand covered my mouth, terrified they'd hear even my breath. I felt hunted like a rabbit cornered while the fox circled closer. Just then, a piercing alarm blared through the house. At first, I thought it was the police, but no. It was the old security system my husband had installed years ago. Daniel must have triggered a sensor when he smashed the kitchen window. We hadn't used that system in years, but somehow the dormant siren had awakened, shrieking like a mechanical guardian. The sound startled them both. For a split second, I saw the fear in Daniel's eyes. But instead of retreating, his fury doubled. "You think a siren will save you?" he roared. "They won't get here in time." Still, the alarm added chaos to the night. It was no longer just me and my son, it was the house itself crying out. The walls seemed alive, echoing my terror, amplifying the urgency of that fragile 911 call. The first hammer blow against the bathroom door jolted me back. The wood splintered instantly. A jagged crack opened, and through it I saw Daniel's eye, bloodshot and unrecognizable. "Open up, Mom. Don't make me drag you out." My whisper surprised even me. No. The silence that followed was worse than the hammer. Then another blow came widening the crack. Vanessa's laughter rang behind him, unhinged. "Get her, Daniel. She thinks she's clever. She thinks she's smarter than us." I crouched in the corner, clutching the phone like a crucifix. I prayed silently. I thought of my husband, my younger son Andrew, my grandchildren Ethan and Emma, and I realized this was the moment that separated who I had been from who I must become. Oddly, a thought flashed across my mind those late nights when I'd scroll online, stumbling onto Reddit revenge stories. Tales of ordinary people pushed too far, finally standing up. I had always read them with disbelief, shaking my head, but now I was living one. Only this wasn't some stranger's tale, it was my son at the other end of the hammer. The irony made me want to laugh and cry all at once. Would people one day read about me in a thread of Reddit revenge stories, wondering if they'd have the courage to resist? Through the alarm, through the hammer, through Vanessa's shrieks, I heard them. Faint at first, then louder. Sirens growing closer. The operator's voice returned to me. "Ma'am, officers are almost there. Stay hidden. Hold on." Daniel froze for a heartbeat, hearing it too. Panic flickered across his face. He turned pacing like a caged animal. Vanessa clutched my purse, rifling for my bank cards. "You ruined everything," Daniel screamed. "This is all your fault." "No," I whispered, strength surprising me again. "You ruined yourself when you became a thief." The third blow split the bathroom door nearly in two. Daniel shoved his arm through the gap, fingers clawing for the lock. I pressed myself into the corner, trembling, yet some strange calm settled over me. If this was the end, I would not let my final act be surrender. But before he could force it, the pounding of fists and boots echoed through the house. "Police hands up." Daniel jerked back, his face torn between rage and fear. Vanessa dropped the sheets she'd planned to tie me with. The wail of sirens filled the night, drowning out even the alarm. Being cornered like prey, I was the hunted, trapped in the bathroom, with nothing but a phone in my hands, begging for salvation in the void. Every thud of Daniel's hammer was the predator's teeth closing in. And yet somehow that fragile call became the thread that held me to life. If you were in my place, cornered by the child you raised, would you keep silent, or would you risk everything to call for help? Press 0 for stay silent. Press 1 for call for help. And if stories like these move you the way Reddit revenge stories once moved me, don't forget your small act of clicking, like helps others discover them too. The sirens grew louder, closer. Their wail blended with the shriek of the old security alarm that still echoed through the beach house. Yet in that madness, one truth struck me like lightning. My son was not leaving, not without tearing every last shred of dignity from me. Daniel's face hovered in the jagged crack of the bathroom door, his eye wild, unrecognizable. Vanessa paced behind him, clutching the bedsheets she had planned to tie me with. The predator had cornered me, but for the first time that night, something inside me shifted. Yes, I was prey, but even prey can bite when cornered. I thought of my husband, his hands rough from years at the docks, steadying mine when I doubted myself. His voice low but firm. "Evelyn, protect what we built. Don't ever let anyone tear it away." That memory wasn't just comfort. It was fuel. The flame that had almost died flickered back to life. "I'm not giving you my money, Daniel," I said. My voice shook, but it was stronger than it had been all night. Not this way. Daniel snarled, the hammer raised high. For a heartbeat, I thought he would swing it down on me, but he didn't. Instead, he smashed it against the mirror. Glass exploded like icy rain across the tiles. "This is what you do to me," he screamed. "You force me to this. If you loved me, you'd give it all." The mirror was gone, but in its place stood my reflection in him, a broken, desperate man, where once there had been a boy who kissed my cheek goodnight. And then a sudden crackle of sound cut through the chaos. The baby monitor. I had left one in the guest bedroom for when my grandchildren Ethan and Emma visited. Somehow, in the madness, Vanessa must have triggered it. From the small speaker came an innocent recording, the twins singing off-key, laughing in their little voices. "Grandma, look at me." The memory played back like a ghost filling the room. The effect was instant. Daniel froze, the hammer still clutched tight, his chest heaving. His eyes darted toward the sound. For the briefest moment, I saw my son again, the boy who had once helped me paint the nursery yellow, the boy who swore he'd always take care of his children. But just as quickly, the softness vanished, burned away by rage. "Turn it off," he shouted at Vanessa. "Don't let her use them against me." Yet it wasn't me using them. It was the echo of innocence itself, crying through that monitor, reminding us of everything he was throwing away. Daniel lunged forward, forcing the latch. The bathroom door gave way, splintering under his strength. He stormed inside, his face red, his breath ragged. "Sit down, Mom," he ordered, pointing to the chair in the corner. "You're going to finish that transfer right now." Vanessa hovered behind, her voice sharp. "Do it, Evelyn. You don't want the kids to lose everything because of you." But the monitor still crackled, replaying giggles and songs. And somehow that small accidental ghost gave me strength. "I won't," I said. And this time my voice was steel. "You can tie me, you can scream, you can even raise that hammer, but I will not betray your father's memory. I will not betray myself." The flame burned brighter. Daniel's eyes widened, shocked that I dared to resist. He stepped closer, gripping the hammer. For a moment, predator and prey stared each other down. Behind him, Vanessa shouted, frantic, "The police are here. We need the money before they break in." The sirens were deafening now. Red and blue lights danced through the window, reflecting against the shards of glass on the floor. And I realized I didn't need to fight them with strength. My weapon was time. Every second I held firm was another second closer to rescue. So I sat taller, meeting his gaze. "You won't win, Daniel. Not tonight." Daniel roared and slammed the hammer into the wall plaster, raining down. "You'll regret this, Mom. You'll regret every word." But in my chest, something had shifted permanently. I was no longer the broken woman begging for mercy. I was the widow who had survived loss, the mother who had sacrificed everything, the guardian of 2 innocent grandchildren who deserved better. Even if this was my last stand, it would be mine. And in that stand, I thought again of the strange comfort of stories, those late-night Reddit family tales I had once read. People who found strength at their weakest. People who said no when everything around them screamed yes. I was no longer reading them. I was living one. Would others one day whisper about my story in the threads of Reddit family tales? Maybe. But I wasn't fighting for strangers. I was fighting for Ethan, for Emma, for the memory of my husband, and for myself. The pounding on the front door grew louder. Police hands up, everyone on the ground. Daniel's head snapped toward the sound. Panic washed over his face. Vanessa dropped the purse she'd been rifling through. I sat still, unflinching. My flame wasn't just alive, it was blazing. And in that blaze, I saw what my son could not the end of this nightmare. For the first time in hours, I felt taller than the man with the hammer. The dying flame burning bright. In the ruins of her trust, Evelyn's dignity flared one last time. Loyalty to her husband's memory, love for her grandchildren, and self-respect turned her fear into fire. The pounding on the front door rattled the entire beach house. My son's hammer dropped to his side, his knuckles white with fear. Vanessa's eyes darted wildly between me and the flashing red and blue lights slicing through the night. Police opened the door, hands where we can see them. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the room. Then everything erupted. Daniel lunged toward me again, his hand closing around my wrist. His grip burned, but this time I didn't cry out. I met his eyes, steady, unblinking. "You'll ruin us all, Mom," he hissed. Before he could pull me away, the front door exploded inward. Splinters flew. Heavy boots pounded across the floor. Shouts filled the house, layered over the screeching alarm still blaring from the kitchen. Hands up, drop the weapon. It was a storm, sirens, boots, shouts, the crackle of radios, all crashing together and sweeping through the home that had been my sanctuary. A storm that tore Daniel's grip from me, that knocked Vanessa's words into silence. And for the first time in hours, I could breathe. Daniel swung the hammer once more, not at me, but wildly toward the officers. A flash of light red dot against his chest froze him. "Drop it now!" An officer barked, weapon steady. For a terrifying second, I thought my son would push further, that the storm would swallow him whole. His chest rose, fell, rage boiling over. Then the hammer clanged to the ground. He dropped to his knees. Vanessa screamed, clutching at him, but two officers dragged her back, her wrists bound in seconds. Another pulled Daniel's arms behind him, cuffs clicking shut. The storm had decided his fate. Through the chaos, another voice broke in. "Evelyn, Evelyn, are you all right?" It was Margaret Williams, my neighbor from 2 doors down. She'd been watching the flashing lights from her porch and rushed over as soon as the police stormed inside. A widow like me, Margaret had always been a quiet presence. Kind smiles over morning coffee, quick chats about gardening. Tonight she became something else, a witness to everything I had endured. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest as she looked at the broken glass, the splintered door, the hammer on the floor. I heard shouting hours ago. I should have called sooner. Her words sliced me in a way I hadn't expected. I had felt so alone, so trapped in that bathroom, and yet someone had been near, listening, worrying. That realization brought a fresh wave of tears. The officers guided me gently out of the bathroom, stepping around shards of glass. One wrapped a blanket over my shoulders. Another pressed a flashlight beam across my bruised wrists, clucking quietly in dismay. But I barely felt any of it. My body was here, my mind still in the corner of the bathroom, clutching the phone like salvation. Voices swirled around me, blending into the storm. Secure the scene. Take their statements. Check the back window. Every word was muffled like hearing underwater. I wasn't free yet. I was dazed, tumbled about by the current of the storm. Daniel looked up at me as officers pulled him to his feet. His eyes were wild, filled not with remorse, but with betrayal. "You did this to me," he spat. "You destroyed your own son." I wanted to scream back that he had destroyed himself, but my voice wouldn't come. My throat closed around the words. All I could do was stare, my heart heavy with the weight of what once was. Vanessa's voice rang out behind him, shrill and venomous. "You'll pay for this, Evelyn. You'll regret ever crossing us." The officer holding her jerked her arm. "That's enough." But her words hung in the air like smoke after fire. Margaret moved closer, her hand brushing mine. "You're safe now," she whispered. "They can't hurt you anymore." Her touch grounded me. For weeks, months, even I had believed I was fighting this battle alone. Now, standing in the wreckage, I realized I had an anchor, someone who saw me not as prey but as a neighbor, a friend, a survivor. The officers asked her for a statement, and she gave it without hesitation, her voice shaking but firm. I saw them force their way in. I heard the threats. She never raised her hand. She begged for peace. Her words, simple as they were, became a shield I hadn't known I needed. When the storm finally began to quiet, when the alarm was silenced, when the radios crackled softer, when the officers guided Daniel and Vanessa out into the waiting squad cars, I stood in the ruins of my beach house. Glass crunched under my slippers. My pearls hung askew, one strand broken, rolling across the floor like tiny white tears. The air smelled of plaster dust, sweat, and fear. The storm had passed, but it left devastation in its wake. I sank into a chair, the blanket still draped around me. My body trembled, but deep inside something else stirred relief. Not triumph, not yet, but relief that the night had ended with me alive. Relief that my flame, however small, had endured the storm. The storm breaks open. Sirens, boots, radios, shouts, chaos crashing through the home like a tidal wave. It swept away the danger, but left Evelyn numb, stunned, caught between devastation and relief. Does this voice carry the weight of the storm for you? Press 0 if it doesn't. Press 1 if it does. The storm had passed. The police cars' flashing lights had faded into the distance, carrying Daniel and Vanessa away. Silence settled over the beach house, broken only by the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock. I sat in my chair, the blanket still around my shoulders, numb and hollow. My son was gone. Not just taken by police, but gone from me in a deeper way. When the hammer fell from his hand earlier, I thought I had seen a glimpse of the boy I once knew. But now, in the aftermath, I understood the truth. The boy I raised was already lost long before tonight. 2 days later, a detective came to see me. His name was Detective Harris, a man with tired eyes and a quiet voice. He carried a small notebook, its pages filled with scribbles and observations. "We've been watching Daniel for a while," he admitted, flipping through the worn pages. "Your son, he got tangled in something bigger than himself." I wanted to scream that I already knew that every mother senses the storm before it breaks. But I stayed quiet, listening. "Gambling debts," Harris said finally. "Poker rooms, back alley games, online sites. He borrowed money from the wrong people, dangerous people. And when he couldn't pay, they came knocking. We believe Vanessa pushed him too, telling him the only way out was your savings." He slid the notebook across my kitchen table. I stared at the scribbled names, the dollar amounts, the red underlines. Numbers I didn't understand except that they added up to destruction. It felt like reading my son's obituary written not in words, but in debts and broken promises. Anger boiled in me, but it wasn't clean. It was tangled with sorrow, twisted with love. How do you hate the child you once cradled? How do you stop loving the boy who once whispered he'd protect you forever? I realized I didn't hate him. I grieved him. It was as though Daniel had died, not tonight, but long ago, when he placed his first reckless bet, when he traded trust for risk, when he gambled away not just money, but his own soul. I mourned the man still alive because the son I loved had been buried beneath addiction, desperation, and shame. That evening, my younger son Andrew came. A lawyer, steady and reliable, he had been the opposite of Daniel all his life. His face was pale when he walked through the broken doorframe. "Mom," he whispered, taking my hands. "I'm so sorry. I should have stepped in sooner." I shook my head. "This wasn't your burden, Andrew. We can't save someone who refuses to be saved." Still, he stayed with me as I explained the detective's notes. His jaw clenched, his shoulders stiff. But even he couldn't mask the grief. "It's like he's gone," he said softly. "Like the brother I had doesn't exist anymore." We sat together in silence, two survivors mourning the same ghost. Later that night, as Andrew made tea, Margaret, my neighbor, knocked gently at the back door. In her hands, she held a small cassette recorder. "I don't know if this helps," she said, "but I recorded some of the shouting the other night before the police arrived. I was scared, so I pressed record." She placed the tape recorder on the table. When Andrew played it back, Daniel's voice filled the kitchen, raw, desperate, unhinged. "Mom, don't you see? They'll kill me if I don't pay. I have no choice." Hearing it again broke me in a way I hadn't expected. Beneath the rage, there had been fear. Beneath the violence, there had been terror. He wasn't only trying to take my money, he was trying in his twisted way to survive. And that, perhaps, was the cruelest truth of all. In the days that followed, I thought about that tape over and over, about the debts, the danger, the shadowy men who had pulled Daniel down. I thought about Vanessa, too, whether she had been a partner in his downfall or a victim swept up alongside him. The anger never left me, but it was joined by something else. Compassion. Not forgiveness, not yet, but compassion for the brokenness of a man who had once been whole. Every addiction, every debt, every lie, it all painted the same portrait. A man too weak to resist, too proud to ask for help, too lost to find his way back. Andrew asked me once, "Do you think he can change? Do you think prison might save him?" I looked at my younger son, the weight of decades pressing on me. "I don't know," I admitted. "Sometimes people don't come back from the darkness. Sometimes the person we loved is already gone." And as I spoke, I realized the truth. I was no longer waiting for Daniel to come home to me. The altar had crumbled, the storm had passed, and all that remained was the wreckage. I loved my son, but I also mourned him. Pain mixed with human tragedy, not pure anger, but grief. Evelyn saw Daniel not only as a criminal, but as a man undone by his own choices, by gambling and debts, by weakness. She loved him even as she knew she had already lost him. The days after Daniel's arrest blurred together. The silence in the beach house was deafening, no longer filled with shout sirens or the hammering of fists, but with the weight of memory. Every corner seemed to whisper what had happened. The shattered mirror, the splintered door, the broken strand of pearls, all reminders of a night that had torn my world apart. Yet slowly, almost imperceptibly, another sound returned, the cry of gulls at dawn, the steady crash of waves against the shore. Life itself had not ended, though mine had been irrevocably altered. A week later, Andrew brought Ethan and Emma to see me. Their small hands clutched mine as if afraid I would vanish too. "Grandma, are you okay?" Emma asked, her eyes wide and serious, far older than her years. I knelt down, pulling both children close. "I'm okay now, sweetheart, and you're safe here. That's what matters." In their faces, I saw the past and the future, colliding, the innocence of my grandchildren and the shadow of their father. But holding them, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. I made a decision that day. Whatever had been lost with Daniel, I would not let it consume the next generation. Ethan and Emma would know love, stability, and hope. If I could not save my son, I would save his children. Andrew helped me contact a lawyer, and soon I was granted temporary guardianship of the children. Vanessa, facing her own charges, had no ground to contest. At first, the responsibility felt overwhelming. My body was older, my energy not what it once was. But then I remembered I had worked double shifts for decades, raised 2 sons on my own, built a home from nothing. If I could do it, then I could do it now. We moved out of the beach house. The memories were too heavy, the cracks in the walls too deep. Instead, I bought a modest home in Arizona closer to my sister Margaret. The children needed a fresh start, and so did I. The new house had a wide backyard with a sturdy oak tree. The first morning we spent there, Ethan and Emma ran barefoot through the grass, laughing as the sun rose above the horizon. Watching them, I felt as if I were watching my own sunrise after the storm. The road wasn't easy. Nights came when nightmares woke me when I heard phantom sirens or felt the echo of Daniel's grip on my wrist. But healing, I discovered, wasn't about forgetting. It was about transforming pain into something new. I joined a community group for grandparents raising grandchildren. I started attending yoga with Margaret and even joined a writing circle where I shared my story. Each time I spoke it aloud, the weight grew lighter. And each morning, as I packed lunches and braided Emma's hair as I listened to Ethan's wild stories about dinosaurs and rockets, I felt a piece of my heart mend. Loss had carved a canyon in me, but into that canyon light was pouring. One evening, sitting on the porch with Margaret, I found the words I'd been searching for. You know, I said, we spend so much of our lives building altars to people. Husbands, children, dreams. And when those altars collapse, we think we can't survive. But maybe the lesson isn't about keeping the altar standing. Maybe it's about finding the strength to rise from the rubble and build again. Margaret squeezed my hand. That's exactly what you've done. And she was right. I had lost my son to the darkness, but I had gained something else, a new reason to live. Now each morning I wake early. I stand at the back porch with my coffee watching the horizon. When the first golden light spills across the sky, I think of my husband, of Andrew, of the children still sleeping in their beds. I think even of Daniel, not with anger, but with a sorrow that has softened into acceptance. He chose his path. I cannot walk it for him, but I can walk mine with dignity, love, and hope. Standing in that sunrise with Ethan and Emma racing across the yard, I feel the truth settle into my bones. Life doesn't end with loss. It begins again in ways we never expect. Sunrise after the storm. Evelyn, once crushed, now stands tall again. Holding her grandchildren, she finds new purpose. What was once only pain becomes the seed of healing. The storm destroyed, but the sunrise rebuilds. To those listening, storms come for all of us. Sometimes they take what we thought we could never live without. But even in the wreckage, there is always the possibility of sunrise. The question is not whether we fall, it is whether we choose to rise again. Thank you truly for staying with me through this story. If Evelyn's journey has touched you, if you felt the storm and the sunrise in your own life, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to stay with us for more stories like this. Leave a comment with your reflections. I do read them. And don't forget to watch the next video where we'll explore another tale of resilience and renewal, because no matter how dark the night, together we can remind each other the sunrise always comes.